Some of us have responsibilities that are given to us earlier in life than others. Sometimes that's a child or another mouth to feed, or sometimes we aren't given those big responsibilities. But at one point or another, at one time or another, sooner or later, the universe calls all of us in big ways. But is it always calling us? Is it calling us in each moment that we are alive? I didn't have any grand responsibility. I was just so lucky and just so blessed with a family that took care of me. And after I moved out of my home, I was just as blessed with my best friend who regarded me as his family and took care of me. So I've never had to take care of myself. Has the universe been calling me all this time? Yeah, absolutely. And it's been calling me in different ways too. Maybe it hasn't called me in ways of providing physically, but it's called me. It's called me to improve emotionally. It's called me to grow internally. It's called me to understand. It's called me to delve beneath the surface of behavior and to really understand why someone is the way that they are. And I think I had that calling as soon as I was born with my mom. I think that we are always called and called in each moment. And that calling doesn't look the same for all of us. And sometimes it's not as directly in front of your face like the responsibility of a new child. But I've still felt called in my life. And I felt called even without having something directly in front of my face. I've always been called, I know. And I started feeling called in my early 20s when a lot of things happened at the same time. I started living with my best friend. I moved out of my house. I started living with my best friend. And then I started writing for the first time really seriously. I'd written after my dad died when I was a teenager. But it wasn't a practice. And it wasn't a conscious thing that I was doing where I knew that I was healing. But in my early 20s, I healed a lot through rewriting the story of my past, my father's death, my expectations of my mom. And I think it was then that I realized that I have a really grand purpose and a grand mission. And I've known that for some time. I've just been so afraid. But the universe has called me all the while. It's called me every day of my life. And I guess I'm so grateful that it has. I mean, if I did have a child already, would I have accepted that calling? Yes. So maybe the calling of such a responsibility is one that is clearly given to you, is a gift and a blessing. But then it still makes me wonder, because I so believe in the way the universe works and its plans for each of us and how it wants the best for all of us. And so if it did want the best for me, it would have given me that, but I have a different path. And so I was thinking about this because my best friend's podcast, which is called the Stop Sinking Show, I'll link it below, but he has an episode that just came out. It's called Call to Action. And he talks about how he hasn't had a big call to action in his life. And it's ironic to me because my best friend has been taking care of me all his life. At least for like 10 years when I lived with him. And I watched him answer the call to each human being that he found himself in front of, on the phone with, in his vicinity, in his home. He is the greatest friend, coworker, neighbor, stranger, just a human being who rises in all facets, in all elements, and excels truly in his life. And I could see his call to action every day. I could see it in every moment, in every decision he would make. I could see it in the way that he did a certain thing the same way each time. I could see it in the way that he measured something twice each time. I could see it in the way that he never let himself get away with anything. He gave himself a call to action, or I don't know if he gave it to himself or the universe gave that to him, but his life in each moment was an example of integrity, is an example of integrity. And so he's answered the call to action, and maybe it hasn't been through a child or through the responsibilities that I guess having a family, but he's had me, and he's certainly fed me and taken care of me. And now with his father ill, he has also answered that call to action, moved across the world to take care of his father in a completely new environment. And he's really the epitome of somebody who lives each moment of his life answering the call to action in each moment. And so if you are like this, or you know somebody like this, then you know that they live, or you live each moment deciding what is the right thing to do, the best thing to do, and the most difficult thing to do in that moment. And you do it. And there is literally a call to action in each moment. It doesn't have to be something grand. It doesn't have to be a mouth to feed. It could just be your own. It could be your own integrity. It could be cleaning your house when you don't feel like it, tidying up a room when you're not inclined to. It could be leaning into your fear. It could be having a difficult conversation. I know that we're being called each moment of our life. And I don't think that that's any less than having a big responsibility like a human life or a child. Is it different? Yes. But some people still feel called, or sometimes we all feel called just through ourselves. And I think when we answer that call within ourselves, then we rise in our own life, and we answer the universe's call to action for us at that time, at that moment. And it doesn't look the same for everybody in each moment of their life. And I believe that that's part of the unique plans that the universe has for all of us. So if you don't have a responsibility that somebody else has, and the other person maybe has grown in such ways from having that responsibility, I would ask you, what are the ways in which you have grown, in which maybe other people haven't? What are the ways that you have grown? because of the calls to action that you have answered in your own life. How have you risen, and how do you continue to rise in each moment? How do you do the difficult thing when you don't feel like it? How do you have the tough conversation? How do you sit with yourself and really look at hard and honest truths? Because we're all being called always, whether or not we know it, whether or not we have to look after another human life. We're always being called, and sometimes that means just looking after our own. In different ways, not just physically, but maybe mentally, maybe emotionally. I know that for myself, the ways in which I've looked after myself, being blessed physically and financially, I've had to look after myself emotionally, and I've always had to do that. And it's become my superpower. It's become the strength that I share with the world today. And I know that I have been called for that my entire life, from the moment I was born. So, where are you being called? Where have you been called? And where can you also assume responsibility? Where can you find calls to action in your life that can help you rise, that can help you become more of the person that you want to be? I hope you find them. And I hope you answer the calls that you know are present currently. I love you. Thank you.